I find your lack of faith disturbing.
N3 Radio in the mix.
Welcome back to N3 Radio presents Don't Tread on Me. We are still the counterinsurgency to the communist invasion. This is episode, what did we say, 31 now? Is it 31?
Yeah, this is 31. It's incredible.
So I had 32 up on our notes, but it's 31. And we are recording today on February 1st, 2019. And resisting the resistance with me, as always, is Beachball. Beachball, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to hear from you. I'm excited to get to talk to you and just hear what you got to say.
Well, this is officially our first recording of the new year. It's been an eventful month. I got new equipment, and I hope it sounds good on your side. I hope the equipment paid off on your end, the listener.
It did great. It did in many ways because it sounds perfectly clear, crystal clear.
Yeah, I was getting sick and tired of sounding like in a fish tank, and we've been putting off getting this equipment. And Santa Claus showed up and dropped some equipment under my tree. If you're following the Facebook page, I put pictures up. It's it's kind of a little simple rig, but for right now, it's a big upgrade from like where we started off on Blog Talk Radio, just speaking through the phone.
Yeah.
I've been catching that we're all over the place. I don't realize how much we're all over the place. I mean, it's kind of big for our tiny little show in the middle of nowhere. But a friend of mine found our show on YouTube. I didn't know we were on YouTube.
It's great, isn't it?
He found us on iHeartRadio. Had no idea we were on iHeartRadio. I'm sorry, but my corrections work and everything else I do, being a full-time parent, kind of takes my mind out of what's going on in N3 Radio. But I mean, that's why we have you, the editor in chief here at N3 Radio, to give us an update of what's going on the network. So hey, this is a good spot to tell us what's going on.
Well, obviously, yeah, we're expanding a little bit. I'm glad you found out the hard way that we're on iHeartRadio and YouTube. You're like, whoa, we're expanding here faster than I thought. Yeah, and it's just it's a great opportunity for us to get not only your program out there, but all our programming out there. And I'm just glad that we could start the new year fresh and have you have some great topics today. I was just checking out your notes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hope, basically what I want to do today is I just want to sit back and talk about the things that have been going on in the last 2 months where we really haven't had a chance to get together. I mean, like, this is, why I asked you about what's going on in N3 Radio. Is there anything new for the new year at N3 Radio as a whole?
Oh, the store will be opening up, of course, sometime this year, and we're also going to be having a phone app as well, where you could just download the N3 Radio phone app and connect to us there. That way you don't have to just go to a website. We're keeping up with the times. Awesome. As far as the show, yeah, the only thing I had for this show, I was going to try and keep questions to a minimum, just to keep the conversation flowing, because I want to hear what you have to say on all these subjects. The only question I have for you, because unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunately, you are my Star Wars guide, and I don't like to get into it right away, but I have to ask you, in your opinion, where is the trailer? Did they realize they messed up and they know they have to get this one right, or what's going on with that? And then I'll let you flow from that into your first subject.
Well, they have a big event that's coming here. I believe it's in April this time around, where they call it, every year they do a convention every year or so called Star Wars Celebration. And this year,
right.
and it's in Chicago.
April. Chicago, okay.
Yeah, it's in April. I don't think we'll see anything until April. I think, honestly, but let's look at this honestly. I mean, Disney.
So 8 months before the.
Yeah,
8 months instead of a year like they did before.
Well, there's a different sentiment out there now. You know, people aren't so confident with the brand. So does Disney want to dump millions of dollars into marketing something that comes out in December, you know, rather than, you know, marketing stuff that's coming out much sooner? I mean, and
so nothing there. Yeah, so no surprises during the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Well, you know, the Super Bowl cost a lot of money to run an ad for something that's coming out essentially a year later.
Okay.
I don't think it makes any. I don't think it makes any sense unless they're gonna. I mean, like all the rumors out there is that they're not doing anything, and it's probably a smart thing. Now, J.J. Abrams, when he did The Force Awakens, dropped the trailer, a small little teaser, literally 13 months before the movie came out. It was in November of 2014. They dropped a trailer out the day after Thanksgiving.
But that was different times. There were concerts at the gazebo.
Yeah. There was a different confidence, and the fandom wasn't so divided at that time. And I think there's some stuff going on there in Lucasfilm. One thing in particular, Carrie Hart, who was the head of the Lucasfilm story group, is nowhere to be found on the Lucasfilm website. Now, this is just this is just speculation, but I believe this is all has to do with what's going on and not liking the direction in general of where the films, but more importantly, the expanded universe, as we used to call it, the books, the comics, all that stuff, the direction of all that shit and where it was going. And I think Carrie Hart either fired or resigned or whatever the case may be. That's a nudge into the right direction, because all the rumors are saying that there's a big divide within Lucasfilm itself, that, you know, a lot of the people, whether they agree personally of the political aspects of what they've done over the last 5, 6, 7 years now, maybe they realize that a lot of this stuff is ineffective to keeping people coming to see your shit. You know, you gotta put people in the seats, and if people are have a bad taste in their mouth for what Lucasfilm is putting out there when it comes to the Star Wars brand, they want to be careful in spoiling it further. You know, this is, these movies, in order to make these movies right, and in order to make people continuously buying tickets to come see these movies over and over again, you gotta have a brand of material that's not spoiled. And I would say the Last Jedi really put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, and it took me a little bit of time to kind of like really kind of personally feel the sentiment myself. You know, there was a movement going on before I was ever really kind of attached to it. But when I finally got my Blu-ray disc and I put it in my Xbox and I watched it, I really sat there and I thought, like, really, I really don't like what I'm watching. You know, and maybe that's part of being a super fan of something. When you're a super fan of something, you sometimes find it hard to see the faults. But I think, I don't think originally, Beach Ball, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you enjoyed the movie for a certain extent when you first saw it in the theater, correct?
Yeah, I did, but as it was like, I don't know, it was like being left over at aunt and uncle's house, and there's like nothing left to do, and they start showing you pictures of old people that are supposed to be your relatives and stuff, and there's nothing to do, and you're so bored, and then there's like this, you find this peanut that's like in your cushion, and you're so bored and you just eat it, and you start feeling like sick like an hour or two later because you ate it, and you have to wait around, and it just got worse and worse as the movie went. Like, I was willing to excuse the whole Leia thing because she was a Skywalker and it was working for the story at the time, but then it felt like too many cooks spoiling the broth. You know what I mean? Too many, like, pass from editor to editor in a desperate attempt to save it.
You know, I understand. Yeah, I concur with what you're saying. And I remember there were some things in The Force Awakens which I particularly didn't like. And the whole concept of Star Killer Base and why it's like built into the side of a planet and how it works and all those kind of things. I mean, like, Star Wars isn't hardcore science fiction. It's fantasy.
Space opera.
More space opera, more fantasy than to say like Star Trek, which, you know, where you haggle over the minutia and the fine details.
Yes.
So I personally felt like I believe I was 80% happy with The Force Awakens. I particularly liked the characters, regardless of their race and gender. And I was willing to allow the next two movies to explain to me why Rey was so powerful. So
yeah, and I was excited to get the DVD, whereas after the Last Jedi, I was like, I'm not getting the DVD.
Well, I did get the DVD because I'm a collectionist. All right,
real quick, since we have this break, have you noticed that the uncertainty in Star Wars, the tendrils have reached between like different genres of different forms of entertainment? Like EA is going down, and they've only had 2 Star Wars titles in the last, like, let's say 8 years. You know, if you think about it, it isn't amazing. It's just like it's reaching out, and it's starting to affect every facet of the entertainment industry, slowly but surely. Gaming and the entertainment world.
I don't know. EA has a problem in itself outside of the Star Wars brand, and I mean, like, almost every year they're named like one of the most worst companies out there.
Yeah,
so
but
they already have issues.
The loot boxes didn't help with the last game, and I'm also hearing that, like, they had there was this, you heard about what was one of our favorite games of all time, I can't remember it now. It used to be on the Xbox, Knights of the Old Republic, that's what it was. You know they canceled Part 3, right?
Well, I mean, that's actually kind of old news.
Really?
One of the things you have to realize is a lot of the news that you see from these like clickbait sites are old stories dredged up and rewritten and all that stuff. I mean, like, you got to remember that these so-called journalists are not journalists at all. They're trying to keep people reading their crap, and a lot of times they inject their activism into it. I mean, we talk about that about a lot of things here, but I mean, it's no different for video games. I mean, it's a big reason why Gamergate existed, is because you had journalists trying to dictate some fake accusations made by this feminist radical, Anita Sarkeesian. And the people who stood up to it were trying to say that, no, the video games that she made just suck. And it really has nothing to do with her political accusations that she's making. Her games suck. The writers who wrote good reviews about it are just afraid to be against her feminist bullcrap. But we have when it comes to the articles out there, there's a lot of bad shit, and it encompasses everything that you deal with, regardless of who you are. It's not just gaming. It's, it's products. I mean, like Gillette can't put out a commercial without injecting gender politics into it. So,
have you noticed that they changed the commercial lately right before the Super Bowl?
I have no idea. I just decided that I'm no longer buying Gillette as a product.
Oh, no. I know that. I mean, I think a lot of people decided that when they saw the commercial. I just noticed this morning, though, that the commercial, if you know, is not running at all anymore, and they've changed it real quickly in time for the Super Bowl. It's a new commercial featuring, a football player and everything.
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah. So they changed it real quick.
Oh, that's funny. That's fine. Good for them. Good for you, Gillette. Maybe too little, too late.
Exactly.
The problem is these are things that would have only really would have bothered a small portion of people who were active on the internet. We're getting to the point now where the social justice weirdos have infested themselves into everything, where anything they do now is going to be hyperbolic, and it's going to piss off everybody. I mean, I saw that your buddy Roger Waters from Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah, my buddy. Let me tell you, somebody needs to take a long walk off a short pier.
I see that he's calling to the people who are going to play in the Super Bowl, the halftime show, calling out, telling them to all take a knee. I mean, I guess, but if you don't think that there's something in their contract to be respectful to the flag and all that, you're out of your mind. If those people want to get paid, sure. But there was a whole thing.
What do you expect from a has-been?
He is my favorite part of Pink Floyd, I have to admit.
He is. He's the part of he's the lyrical genius of Pink Floyd. There's no doubt. But it's just like, as he's gotten older, he's gotten a lot more bitter.
Well, I mean, like if you look at his work has always been. If you read through the allegory of the Final Cut and the Wall, you realize that it's all Antifa level, anti establishment, kind of stuff. So it is what it is.
It's true.
So to get back to our original point, Kerry Hart being ejected from the Lucasfilm Story Group, I think is a push in the right direction. I mean, as a Star Wars fan, there's really one product that I'm still pretty excited for, and that is the Mandalorian TV series. I don't know if you're aware of what's going on with that.
No, I don't know what's going on with it, but I'm aware of it, that it is going on.
Okay. Do you know who's running the show?
Is Dave Filoni in the house anywhere?
So it is Dave Filoni, but above him is Jon Favreau. So Jon Favreau gets credit for starting the MCU with the original Iron Man movie, and Disney loves him. I mean, that dude's doing, I think, Lion King, and he did the Jungle Book live action film. So he's definitely loved by Lucasfilm. He's worked with Dave Filoni before, and they're working together to bring us The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian takes place roughly after the Return of the Jedi, and it's about a man with no name kind of character, and I guess we'll find out more from there. But as long as Dave Filoni is working on it, I'm super excited. Because Dave Filoni
me too.
Is the last real connection to George Lucas, and he studied under Lucas's wing during the whole Clone Wars. And if you still haven't watched Clone Wars, I'm sure it's going to be on Netflix for a little longer. I'm not sure when the Disney Plus app comes out, if that's going to be the case. I don't know if the whole Clone Wars is going to transfer over to the new Disney app, but I know the final season of the Clone Wars will be on that Disney Plus app. It might be worth purchasing for at least a short period of time, just to get the resolution of the final season of that show. But if you haven't watched the Clone Wars, you should, if you consider yourself a Star Wars fan. I mean,
okay.
That's my opinion. I mean, it starts out slow. It starts out for young kids, but as it goes on, as you go through the marathon, you realize it gets more and more interesting and more important to George Lucas's story. But that's my opinion.
It's a good opinion, though. I think it's good advice too.
Oh, so I think we could probably use this as a chance to take a real quick break. I got a video here for us. It's audio. We're not going to play video. We're in an audio medium, but it's Dan Boy. How do you say his name? It's Bongino, right? Bongino.
There you go.
Yeah, it's Dan Bongino. He's a former Secret Service agent. He's a Fox News contributor. He's always on Fox News. He just did a book. He wrote a book called Spygate. And in the video, I guess he's at some kind of convention summarizing the breakdown of the Mueller investigation and how it started. So, it's totally worth listening to because it connects all the dots to what they're doing and why they're doing it and who they're covering and what the plan was. And this is all has to do with while Trump was running after the primary and when they started to spy on him at Trump Tower. So it's a worth a listen. You don't have to be like this, like extreme pro-Trump guy, but I mean, he lays out a lot. It makes me definitely interested in taking a look at his book, Spygate, by Dan Bongino. Okay? Check it out, and we'll be back.
Here's how this whole thing starts against Donald Trump. During the election, the Obama administration, which had done whatever it wants because the media is lost in this country, folks. There's no media. Forget it. That's dead and buried. The media's done. They don't do journalism anymore. It's activism, nothing more, right? The Obama administration had grown comfortable with the idea of weaponizing government against their political enemies. It had happened over and over again. We had the IRS scandal. We had the AP phone records scandal, the Jim Rosen Fox News scandal. And I ask you this, what happened to any of the people involved? Anyone? Yeah, the answer is nothing. I have to do zeros like this now. Because I used to do zeros like this, but I found out through the liberal media that somehow this means like a white power symbol now or something. I thought it meant okay or zero, but the media says, no, I'm serious. Like these idiots in the media will tell you. So now I do zeros like that because I'm like afraid of some media idiot. These people are crazy. The Obama administration had gotten completely comfortable with the idea of abusing government for their political means. So what happens? This plan gets hatched, and I'm going to be candid with you. Where exactly it's hatched, nobody is yet sure of to this day. Matter of fact, if you're familiar with my commentary on Fox, I say often one of the great mysteries of this case is what's paragraph 1? Paragraph 1, what do I mean by that? When I was a federal agent, when you arrest someone, you have to do what's called an MR, a memorandum report. Paragraph 1 of that MR is always how the case started. I got a call from Jane Doe, bank fraud investigator, said this credit card number was stolen on April 14, 2015. I made a few calls, and the next thing you know, it's an 80-page report about this massive scheme. Paragraph 1, though, always lays it out. Always. Do you know to this day we still have no idea what paragraph 1, the why they started to spy on the Trump team was? Now, I get it. It was for political. I get that. But at some point, somebody, you have to understand, folks, had to put down on paper a semi-legitimate reason to start the most massive spying operation in a political campaign in U.S. history. Do you know nobody to this day will tell you what that is? I know what it is. So the first plan they do to hit the Trump team, folks, is they learn to manipulate these about queries in the NSA database. The NSA has a database of a whole boatload of information, metadata, texts, that kind of stuff. How it works is too complicated in the time I have. But what you can do is you can query that NSA system and you can get a whole lot of information. Well, what happens? This is plan A. This is how they're going to get the information. I hope, if I'm not following, please stop me, because this is important. The Obama administration figures out that through unmasking, in other words, wiretapping people, pretending they're targeting foreigners, and then querying information in this database, that they can get all the political opposition research in the world that they need against the Trump team. It's beautiful. No one's going to call them out. The media's on their side, right? But there's a good guy in this. There's a white hat. Somebody in the government sniffs this thing out. That's why I tell you, this wasn't plan A. This was the plan. They were going to unmask people, wiretap people, and they were going to query this NSA database and get all the information they needed about the Trump team. But somebody smells a problem, and he's not having it. And he's the white hat. He's the good guy in this story. And it's Mike Rogers of the NSA. Mike Rogers of the NSA senses that there's something wrong about these about queries. In other words, who's tapping into the database here and making political queries? Now, folks, some of you, I don't know your politics. I assume most of you are conservative, libertarian, or Republican, but that's fine either way. If you doubt any of what I'm telling you, just Google the FISA Intelligence Surveillance Court, their report on about queries. Because Mike Rogers goes to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and says, Houston, we got a problem. These queries are supposed to follow very specific guidelines about terrorism, and all these metrics have to be, you can't just spy on Americans in the database. The FISA court looks into it, comes back with a report that was released in March of 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, that is devastating. If you haven't read it, you were doing yourself a great disservice. Page 80 specifically is horrifying. Apparently, the NSA database was being queried by private contractors working with the FBI. These were not even government officials. People within the government were using private contractors to query information they had no judicial or legal authority whatsoever to look at. Rogers smells a rat. People panic in the government. Now, conveniently, what happens right after the election? I'm going to put these pieces together and things will start to make sense. Donald Trump's elected. He's the president-elect, right? 10 days after the election, Rogers, who knows this has been going on the whole time, these unmaskings, the tapping of the... Now does the Donald Trump tweet, they tap Trump Tower, then how does it make sense? He got the wording wrong. He didn't understand exactly how it worked, but the idea was not wrong. Donald Trump's not stupid, trust me. Guy got elected president, earned $1 billion. By the way, I love how these journalists criticize him. The guy's making $25,000 a year writing clickbait pieces for BuzzFeed. Like, Donald Trump's an idiot. Hard pass, brother. Like, well, the guy just won he runs for office the first time and he becomes the president. But let me listen to Joey Bag of Donuts at BuzzFeed. You're right. You've got this. It's like, so about 10 days after the election, Donald Trump, someone goes up to visit Donald Trump in Trump Tower. Who visits him? Mike Rogers. But Rogers doesn't tell anyone. This is going to trip you out totally. He doesn't tell anybody in the White House he's going up there. He visits Trump in Trump Tower, conveniently 10 days after the election, which from my experience in the Secret Service is just enough time for them to go up to Trump Tower, WACA, the White House Communications Agency, for the president-elect, and set up a SCIF where they can talk privately, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. In other words, a place where no one can listen in. Rogers gives it about 10 days, goes up there, has this big meeting with Donald Trump, and what happens the very next day? Donald Trump evacuates Trump Tower and goes to Bedminster, New Jersey to never return for another meeting. You think that was a coinky-dink? Like he did that by accident? Oh, let's just go up to Bedminster. I got nothing else to do. Now, again, this is all in the book in intricate detail. The greatest spy story ever told, except the fact that it actually happened. And it happened against you. Rogers has this meeting. Trump evacuates Trump Tower. The very next day, the Obama administration comes out and calls for somebody to be fired. Who's that somebody? Mike Rogers. And they start blaming it on things like drone strikes and other stuff. Like, really? Could you be any more obvious? The Obama administration knows Rogers is the good guy and fills Trump in on this entire debacle. He probably goes up there and says, brother, they're spying on you, like right now. He doesn't know, but now he does. So he leaves. All of a sudden, people start resigning from the federal government after that. You know who also resigns? Bob Hannigan. Now, who's Bob Hannigan? Bob Hannigan is the head of the GCHQ, which is the British NSA. Well, why do you think the head of the British NSA would resign right after that Rogers meeting, right after Trump finds out about this massive spying operation? I'm going to tell you why right now. I'm not taking a selfie of you. I'm not taking a selfie of myself. I'm going to read to you a headline. This is from CNN. See it right there. I didn't Photoshop this. April 14th, 2017. Remember who Bob Hannigan is. He's the head of the British NSA. British intelligence passed Trump associates' communications with Russians on to U.S. counterparts. You think I'm making this up? That's CNN. I didn't write it. They wrote that. So not only is the United States government in Plan A weaponizing its intelligence community to listen in and computer search the Trump team to hurt them during the campaign for political oppo, they're working with the British and the Australians to pass information about the Trump team onto the Obama administration. Don't take it from me. Take it from CNN. They find out about this. Now, this thing breaks down about halfway through. They move on to Plan B. Sorry, there's a lot more to Plan A, but I, in the interest of time, I want to get through this because the cleanup operation is important. They move on to Plan B. What's Plan B? They realize Rogers is onto them. They're like, hey, folks, we better ease up on the unmasking and the tapping into the database. People are getting caught. This is probably not good. We're leaving a massive paper trail. And what if we lose, right? They move on to Plan B. Plan B is Crossfire Hurricane. They say, well, listen, if we can't spy on them illegally, let's just spy on them legally. We have this beautiful thing called the FISA court, where we can walk into the FISA court, we can get a warrant on somebody, and when you get a warrant on somebody in the Trump team, they have this beautiful thing for the Obama administration called the two-hop rule. Well, it's for everyone, not just for Obama. Meaning, if I spy on you, and you're a member of the Trump team, I can hop to everybody you emailed, and then everybody they emailed. So basically, all I need to do is get a FISA warrant on the guy cleaning the floors in Trump Tower, and I've got everyone. Because if he emailed his boss and his boss emailed Don Jr., I get everybody. Beautiful, right? Not really. Because they were stupid. They were dumb. And they screwed up. The problem with the FISA court, unlike the unmaskings and the tapping into the database, is they had to produce actual evidence in front of a judge. There was a judge in a FISA court that needed evidence that the Trump team was working on behalf of a foreign power, but critically doing it in violation of at least one U.S. law. Folks, they had nothing. They had zero. Do you understand they, to this day, have absolutely zero? Zero. Remember, don't do it one hand. It's a big mistake. Media people, you'll be a white power person after that. They always do it that way. They had zero evidence at all. The funny thing, I'm only half kidding. That's how worried I am about the media. They're so crazy these days, right? They had nothing on collusion. Nothing. Zero. So what does the FBI and the State Department and the DOJ do? They say, well, we don't really have any evidence. Let's just make it up. We've got this guy we worked with in the past, this guy Christopher Steele. Now I'm going to do this. I'm not taking a selfie again. I'm not taking a picture of you. Don't you worry. I'm going to read to you another headline. You need to write this down because this one's going to blow your mind. Any of you read the dossier? You haven't, right? Not many people have. You should. If you haven't read the dossier, don't you worry. Because the dossier was already written back on April 17th of 2007. You're like, what do you mean? I don't get it. 2017, right? No, I didn't get that wrong. It's written right here in the Wall Street Journal on April 17, 2007. Who's the author of this critical Wall Street Journal piece? Glenn Simpson and Mary Jacoby, his wife. Glenn Simpson, the purveyor of Fusion GPS. The article is called, How Lobbyists Help Ex-Soviets Woo Washington. Folks, I dare you to take a moment and read that piece. Put it next to the dossier. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same story. It was written 11 years ago. Glenn Simpson clearly had this information about Russian influence in Washington. He wrote 10 years ago. Read the names in the article. You know who appears in this article? Paul Manafort, all of these players. So what likely happened after Plan A collapses is they say, listen, let's go to the FISA court and do this legally, but we need evidence. We don't have evidence. Don't worry. Hillary Clinton's got a guy at Fusion GPS, says he's got a story to tell. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Simpson took his Wall Street Journal piece like it was a movie script, scratched out the names, put Donald Trump's name in there and said, look, do I got a story for you guys? It's all BS. The whole dossier is crap. Read the article. It's a movie script they recycled. It's a fairy tale. It's an Aesop's fable. It's made up. It's a scam. There is not a scintilla of evidence that it's true. Now, the big question on Plan B till I move to the mop-up operation, Plan C. Now they're in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble because they realize the dossier in and of itself is crap. And a lot of people at the Bureau know it. They need to buttress it with some stuff to make it a little harder. Now's where the Michael Cohen story comes in, Trump's lawyer. In the dossier is a very specific allegation, right? That Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, went over to Prague to set up this whole information exchange with the Russians, right? Well, what's the problem? Michael Cohen had never been to Prague, and his passport proved it. Where do you think they got that name, Michael Cohen? You're darn right. They probably were in that NSA database looking up a Michael Cohen, and they got the wrong guy. I know there's only one Dan Bongino. I can tell you for sure there are a whole lot of Michael Cohens. Are you right? John Smith, John Brown, Cohen, these are common last names. They got the wrong Michael Cohen. So now you should be asking yourself, who the heck was Glenn Simpson dealing with in the government that gave him that name? And how did they get it? Plan B falls apart too. Plan B falls apart because something happens in November. Donald Trump wins. Nobody, I'm telling you, take it to the bank, cash this check, and spend the money. Nobody saw that coming. No one. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to get in. This was all going to go away. They were going to appoint their own attorney general, probably John Brennan, and this story is never, ever to see the light of day, not in their lifetimes. But make no mistake, they know what they did. They all know what they did. Every single one of them. So they have to move on to Plan C. Plan C, I call it clean up on aisle 4. Now they're in trouble. They know they've got white hats in the government. I know one of them right now that's still in the FBI. That's unquestionably cooperating with this investigation if you know how to read the tea leaves. And if you read the book, you'll figure out who it is. People start cooperating and talking, and now people are panicking. Now does John Brennan's meltdown after the election make sense? He's the head of the intelligence community who, again, another thing for you to Google, but it's all in the book again. Who do you think John Brennan met with right before the election at the, quote, director level as reported on by multiple media outlets? Bob Hannigan, the same guy from the British intelligence agency that quits right after Trump's election. He quits 10 days after and doesn't tell anybody about it. He says, oh, I'm leaving for family reasons. What do you mean? You related to Donald Trump? What do you mean family reasons? Family reasons, you're leaving because Donald Trump got elected. Who also quits? John Carlin. Who's John Carlin? He's the head of the Department of Justice National Security Division, the final division in the Department of Justice to put their John Hancock on the FISA warrant. He quits right after the election. Who did John Carlin work for? Now cleanup on aisle 4 is going to start to make sense. Who did John Carlin work for before he got there into the DOJ? He's Bob Mueller's chief of staff. He was Bob Mueller's chief. Now does Bob Mueller make sense? Clean up aisle 4, get the mops out. Everybody realizes they're all going down. They faked a FISA warrant. They have been involved in massive unmaskings. Susan Rice, Samantha Power. They have been busted by the FISA court, tapping into the NSA database for about queries. They left a paper trail 65 miles long. Bob Mueller has to clean this whole mess up. Bob Mueller is the only... Did you notice how right away they had the name? So Bob Mueller's old chief of staff, he's the cleanup guy. Make no mistake. Bob Mueller's job right now is one thing and one thing only. Keep the heat on Donald Trump relentlessly for anything. Jaywalking, ripping off mattress tags, combing his hair the wrong way. Keep the attention on Trump no matter what. Because the minute the Bob Mueller thing is dissolved, all of this is going to come out, and it is hell hath no fury. Folks, they left a paper trail. They can't run from this. Mueller is brought in to get Trump impeached because they don't want any of this to see the light of day. Now, why Mueller? Mueller knows every player involved in this and has intimate connections with all of them. The guy who signs off on the BS FISA warrant, John Carlin, his old chief of staff. His chief bulldog in the case, Andy Weissman. Andrew Weissman worked with Bob Mueller. Andy Weissman was the chief prosecutor on the Enron case when Bob Mueller was the FBI director. Remember the Enron case that they screwed up royally? That's how they know each other. Andy Weissman hates Donald Trump. He's on emails congratulating Sally Yates for telling Donald Trump to go pound sand. Well, it gets better. Who else does Bob Mueller know? On Bob Mueller's Enron team, it all goes back to Enron. That same Enron team, headed by Andy Weissman, had another lead lawyer on the case. Who was it? Catherine Rumler. Who's Catherine Rumler? Obama's White House counsel, who was Obama's lawyer while all of this was going on. They know each other. Now, you may say, fine, so Bob Mueller knows Obama's lawyer while this whole Spygate thing was going on. What's the big deal? You Google George Nader, Daily Beast, you can read an article today. Just popped today before we showed up. One of Bob Mueller's lead cooperators in this case, who's been selling out members of the Trump team from day one, is a guy named George Nader. Who's George Nader's lawyer? Catherine Rumler, Obama's White House counsel and Bob Mueller's buddy. The lawyer for the lead witness in this case feeding information to Mueller is Obama's White House counsel, otherwise known as the fixer. She fixed everything for them. She was involved in Benghazi. She was involved in the IRS. She was involved in the Secret Service scandal. Just Google her name, put in any one of those things, and who's the person giving the statement? Catherine Rumler. Who was also on that Enron task force? Lisa Monaco. Barack Obama's Homeland Security and Counterterrorism advisor in the White House while all of this was going on. They all know each other. Finally, and I'll take some questions. Your final piece to the cleanup on aisle 4 operation. Who else does Bob Mueller know? Who now has legislative, who has control over this, I should say, right now in the Department of Justice, right? Rod Rosenstein, right? Because Sessions had recused himself, now Whitaker's in there, which was a good appointment, right? A case happens a little while ago, the 10X case. It's around 2015 or so. It happens in Maryland. I'm familiar with it because I worked in Maryland as a Secret Service agent in Baltimore. I wasn't involved in that case at all, but I know the office well. The 10X case goes down in Maryland. The 10X case, a cooperator for the United States government paid $50,000 by the FBI. Comes to the FBI with some troubling information that the Russians are helping the Iranians build their nuclear program and that there's a company helping Russians get a hold of our uranium. It's called the 10X case. It was the precursor to something you may have heard about. the Uranium One operation. The same players are involved. The case gets thrown out on a BS press release on a Friday night, so nobody will pay attention. Everybody's gag ordered, and it all goes away. That the Obama administration, an FBI paid informant, admitted that we were giving the Russians uranium while they were building the Iranian nuclear program and chanting "Death to America." Who was the lead prosecutor on that 10X case, the precursor to Uranium One? Rod Rosenstein. And who's the FBI director? Bob Mueller. Folks, they all know each other. This is the biggest scam in American history. Folks, I beg of you, I really do. You cannot let your legislative people, your congressmen or anyone off the hook. Whatever connections you have, you need to keep the heat on this, because if these people don't go down the right way, unlike the Obama administration tried to do it to us, this will happen again. I'm telling you, what they did was such a grotesque, horrendous abuse of power. It disgusts me to this day, and I will never, ever forget that story about that guy we arrested and his crying kid that morning who wasn't going to see his dad for another year. That's a horrible thing to have to do to someone, and it's a grotesque thing to do to someone, to unleash the power of the federal government when they did nothing wrong. And Donald Trump did nothing wrong. And if you read the book, and by the way, one last thing before I get to the questions. It's not a narrative. You don't have to read it straight through. It's written like a police file. I think that's why it's been selling like crazy. You can read the last chapter first. You can go right. It's written like a police file, because the names, like I said, this is an hour-long speech I compressed into 20-plus minutes. The names never stop coming up again, ever. Oleg Deripaska, connected to Vladimir Putin, who's connected to Adam Waldman, a lobbyist who's emailing and texting Mark Warner, a Democrat on the Senate committee. Who's Waldman working for, too? Christopher Steele, the guy working for Hillary. They're connected to the Russians, the people that show up at the Trump Tower meeting. Veselnitskaya with Don Jr. and Rinat Akhmetshin. Veselnitskaya works for Fusion GPS on a separate case. And Akhmetshin, the other guy, the Russian intel guy that shows up at the Trump Tower meeting, you know who his lawyer is? Edward Lieberman. You know who Lieberman's wife is? Evelyn Lieberman, Bill Clinton's old chief of staff.
Okay, and we're back at Don't Tread on Me on N3 Radio. What you just listened to, you listened to Dan Bongino, Secret Service agent. He's got his book coming out, Spygate. It seemed, I mean, from the video, it seems pretty interesting. I might want to check it out. Have you been checking out Ethan Van Sciver on YouTube there, Beach Ball, by any chance?
No, not lately. What's been going on with him?
All right. So do you know who he is? We've talked about him here a couple of times. We've talked about him a couple times. I've just been mostly looking at Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers and Quartering lately for some reason. And then that girl that the Quartering keeps mentioning, she's got some cool takes on things that are going awry with the Star Trek Discovery series, Mechama or something. Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah. I guess she was attacked, and she
was
threatened by some SJWs or whatever. So I mean, it's amazing how they go after people for having difference of opinion. It's amazing. Well, just to bring everybody up to speed, if you're new to the show, we recommend here that you like and subscribe Ethan Van Sciver's YouTube channel. It's called Comic Pro Secrets. It's on YouTube. He's the Comicsgate founder. What Comicsgate is, Ethan Van Sciver is a 26-year veteran of the comic industry. He's known for his work on Green Lantern, and he's one of the founding creators of Jessica Cruz, the female Green Lantern. So basically, he was run out of the comic book industry from social justice warriors based on his political views. And in my video here, it's him talking about a Twitter user who's famous. His name is NERD. It's spelled like NRD, but it's basically phonetic for nerd. he did this troll where he apologized to Rian Johnson, the director of Star Wars The Last Jedi, for being mean and not liking his movie, which that troll pulled a bunch of people out of the woodwork and created this like social justice warrior battle between all the different Twitter idiots. So how long is this video there, Beachball?
8 minutes, 33 seconds.
So it's a good 8 minutes. We'll let you check it out, and we'll be back.
Hey, if you're new here but enjoying the content, join us, subscribe now, and ring that bell for notifications.
A week or so back, I created a brilliant video called Never Ever Apologize to Star Wars SJWs! ! Because this happens. Now, the video was about NERD, a man who was sorry for hating The Last Jedi. Yes, and I am sorry for my sophistication and excellent breeding as well. Even further back, however, I chronicled the sad sack saga of StarWars.com writer and ambitious SJW Brian Young. Contracted Lucasfilm employee, and therefore Lucasfilm insider Brian Young, was the ultimate Star Wars SJW gadfly, until even worse members of the Star Wars SJW cult, the radicalized feminist bully contingent, accused Bobby Roberts, the Lilliputian co-host of Brian's podcast Full of Sith, of sexual assault. Brian said he didn't believe it, which defied the wacko SJW doctrine of always believing unsubstantiated and vague life-ruining accusations, even if there are no actual concrete accusations, even if there is no actual accuser, as long as the rumored and therefore theoretical accuser is female. Brian committed a sin. He didn't believe women. The price for standing by his pygmy pal Bobby Roberts was great. Brian Young was exiled, canceled, unpersoned from the community that once revered him, and accusations of his own impropriety in sex chat rooms filled with underage Star Wars fans began to emerge. Brian retreated, subtly signaling his own childhood abuse, and he waited for a chance to redeem himself to his tribe. That's when our confused friend NERD entered the picture. Ennie's atonement before the SJW Star Wars community, his confession of feelings of sadness from his family problems at home, caught the attention of Lucasfilm figures like Pablo Hidalgo, Matt Martin, and even Roundhead Rian Johnson himself. With the skill of a practiced 8-year-old double Dutch champ, Brian Young saw his opportunity, his timing, his chance to virtue signal like never before. Like a soy-based lighthouse, Brian's signal of virtue would be seen from orbit and might soften the hearts of the SJWs who had kicked him from their misfit island. Brian opened the Twitter app on his iPhone, inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the oxygen he'd need to exhale the carbon dioxide of rectitude, and he typed, "This made me cry reading it. This was impossibly brave, and I'm so grateful Annie found understanding and some peace." All of Twitter fell silent, laid speechless by Brian Young's tweet. Not one twit tweeted, so stunned were the tweeters of Twitter, and Brian exhaled in relief. But was it premature? I'm afraid so. Where was all this oohing and awing about bravery when it was women talking about their experiences of sexual harassment and assault in Star Wars fandom? This is brave? 3 question marks. 3. And then the women spoke up, and they had sharp castrating knives in their Twitter handles. Oh no, Brian.
He must have forgotten their bravery while he was demanding proof of their assault.
More women, more Twitter handles with departing phallic symbols.
As always, men in this fandom get thrown parades for doing the absolute least, or not even really changing or apologizing.
The nightmare wasn't over. Still unpersoned, unnamed, bracketed between asterisks and insulted.
Oh, that must be the schmuck I have blocked and that I've been seeing vague references to all day.
One SJW attempted to stand up for Brian.
You mean how Swank Motron talked about brave women when it was happening and stands up for these women all the time? It is brave to build up a following of fellow people who hate The Last Jedi and then suddenly reverse field. No comparison to #MeToo is needed.
Out came the knife, and Brian's defense, a man, was neutered.
You must have missed when Brian demanded proof from a sexual assault survivor, but sure, he's the champion for women.
And with that visceral emasculation, the other SJW men fell in line. Using sarcasm and emojis, the debilitated males of the Star Wars fandom community vigorously signaled that they thoroughly applied themselves to dogmatic social media social justice rituals of self-debasement. Instead, they suspend women for speaking out. Eye roll emoji. No allies. No allies for Brian Swank Motron Young. None. The Force was indeed female, and these females were force feeding Brian Chuck Wendig's fecal-covered boot. Some wondered aloud why Brian wouldn't just go away. Forever.
God, I muted this twit so I wouldn't have to witness any more arboreal plot twists. Why you gotta throw him back in my feed like this?
Yes, why? Why wouldn't Brian stop forcing himself on women? Why? But perhaps it took a user with a Twitter handle based on a arboreal hero who craved sweet honey the way Brian craves the sweet honey of SJW acceptance to finally put it all into perspective.
Not believing women is no big deal, but this brings him to tears? Brian Young, the pain women have to struggle with is real. Luke Skywalker not being heroic in a stupid movie is fake and make-believe, meaning not important at all, jackhole.
Not important at all, jackhole. Not important at all. So remember, everyone, never apologize to SJWs and never try to appease them, because if you do, you're a jackhole.
And we're back. You just listened to Ethan Van Sciver, Comic Bro Pro Secrets from YouTube. Make sure you go and like and subscribe to his channel. What the great situation here is we've got this NERD guy, right? And for months and months, he's railing the Last Jedi for all the reasons that we are. Identity politics, just all around bad story, bad science fiction, all the reasons why we all hate the movie. And he does this troll where he goes out of his way and he basically writes an apology to Rian Johnson, and all the SJ weirdos start coming out, and it creates a fight between all the social justice warriors, because you can't accept an apology from a normie. And when you accept an apology from a normie, you're allowing that person to get away from his misogyny, his contempt for the patriarch. Meaning you can't allow people to be complicit in the struggle for social justice. So it was really, really, really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Real quick, I want to talk about. I've been bringing up Chris Sequel. Chris Sequel is a founding member of Star Wars Underworld, which is a website and a podcast. And myself and Chris have been friends on Facebook for a little while, and for whatever reason, he just hasn't chosen to unfriend and block me. So every once in a while, I get to see some of his wonderful communist tweets, and I mostly watch in silence, but every once in a while I feel compelled to attack these idiots for their stance. So Chris Sequel posts a post stolen from a guy named Hey Would You Blow Me, or something along those lines. And basically it's burger equals a burger. Cheeseburger equals a version of a burger that has cheese. It's not a statement that all burgers have cheese, but that one variation of a burger has cheese. Masculinity equals masculinity. Toxic masculinity, there is a version of masculinity that is toxic. It's not a statement that all masculinity is toxic, but one variation of masculinity is toxic. So this is Chris's way of stating, well, see, when we are talking about toxic masculinity, we're only talking about that guy. We're not talking about you. So why are you feeling triggered by that word? But my belief is guys like Chris Sequel, Seekell, Seekell. Make sure you follow him on Twitter.
I'll be sure to. Thank you.
Guys like him make it very unclear who specifically they're talking about. So
did you call him? Did you call him out? You say you can't change the meaning of a word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
I did call him out. However, so this is my response to him directly, which turned into a shitstorm. I'm not going to go into every post, but I'm going to go into the nuts and the meat and potatoes of the back and forth between him and his communist comrade Twitter followers or Facebook followers. So my answer starts off as, however, your type has a very serious problem being clear on who exactly you define in such things such as toxic masculinity. The correct statement would be, toxic people exist because toxicity doesn't favor a gender, race, or political affiliation. So, for the simple fact that you genderize the term means that you intend to define that a majority of those who are masculine to be actively toxic or complicit in the toxicity. This is the game you play. Another SJ term designed to marginalize a giant section of people who you do not agree with. I find the whole thing to be extremely problematic. Now, using words like problematic against them is because that's their words. One of my things I like to do is throw their own shit at them. Understand that the type of person that you define as toxic exists because in the world there are other people who don't care about your feelings and their intentions is to kill you. And yes, sometimes those people who you call toxic are simply masculine enough to stop the Germans in the 1940s.
Yeah, I saw that part.
So I got a reply from one of his comrades, one of his allies, as they like to say. Huh? Toxic masculinity is about arrogance, treating women with disrespectfully, bullying, and taking advantage of other people. What the heck does it have to do with fighting the Nazis? And then Chris comes out and he says, it's genderizing because it exists inside gender constructs. Women are not encouraged or expected to exhibit toxic masculinity. And that is why it is defined as a type of masculinity. No, it's defined that because social justice warriors defined it. Took two words, smashed it together to create some little cool 50-cent term that they can throw at will. That's what they did.
Yeah, you're talking in circles and speaking gibberish. It's like you're not even speaking the same language.
It's like the more big words I can throw up there, the more I can confuse you. So I said it's not genderized because it's a tool used to create divide. It's not defined. It's backed by pseudoscience. He gets a little mad when I say pseudoscience. And those characters could easily be applied to the opposite genders of any of the make-believe genders. So I said, so those characteristics could easily be applied to the opposite gender or any of the make-believe genders also. I forgot that I had this in a 2-part. They got so fucking upset with the whole.
You should have posted. I know you should have posted that video that went viral of that trans person that just flipping out at that clerk that happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean, if that's not toxic, then what is it?
That would be an example of toxic masculinity. Because there was nothing feminine about that creature.
Very true. Very true.
Oh, man. I just thought, I could have posted more of this stuff. I didn't want to go too far into it because it started going back and forth. And I think I made my point.
That's okay. Hey, we're halfway through anyway, so it fits in perfectly.
Okay, so where did we leave off? Okay, so we got Jessie Milestone. She's from Geeks and Gamers, the same place from Jeremy, the guy you check out. And
yeah.
She has her own YouTube channel, Mindless Entertainment. You should go and like and subscribe to both. Click the bell for notifications, do the whole thing. She explains allegory in the original trilogy of Star Wars and the lack of it in the Disney era. Check it out, and we'll be back.
Welcome to Mindless Entertainment. My name is Jessie Milestone, and before you ask, yes, I am wearing a camouflage shirt underneath a camouflage jacket. Why am I doing this? It's really not important. What is important is that you would think that after all of this time, I would run out of issues with Disney Star Wars, and yet it feels like I am just getting started. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about an element that has been completely absent from the Disney Star Wars films, and very noticeably so. It's really absent from a lot of cinema today, but it's incredibly noticeable that it's not in the Disney Star Wars movies because it is so prevalent and important in the original trilogy, and even the prequels, actually. So what is this element we're talking about? This element is allegory. In case you're not familiar with storytelling terms, allegory is essentially when you talk about an issue, you frame an issue or an event or something through a different lens. So you're not using the actual event, you're not using the actual issue, the actual words for the issue to describe the issue or talk about the issue or commentate on the issue. You are putting that through a different lens. Example, Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't talk about black people, Asian people, white people, women, men, etc. It uses aliens and droids to make its commentaries about diversity. diversity. Now, why is this better than just being like, look at us, we made a black guy a janitor, stormtrooper, and we made a woman powerful, everybody sing our praises. Why that's better than that thing is because, well, in case it's not obvious, you don't feel like someone is assaulting you and beating you senseless over the head with this stupid commentary. It's just there. It just is there. It doesn't draw focus. It fits in the world. Does it make sense in Star Wars to be thinking about diversity in terms of the color of skin or male, female, etc. a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? No, it doesn't. This place doesn't have the same race relations that the U.S. has or other countries. There is no history of slavery, of enslaved black people in the Star Wars universe that we're aware of. There's no documented history of the patriarchy in the Star Wars society. These aren't things that you can just have conversations about. You don't just talk about them like we do in everyday conversation in society because they don't freaking exist in Star Wars. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot have your commentary on these ideas. You absolutely can. Which is, again, where the allegory element comes in the originals, where you have you're talking about movies that came out, a decade after the biggest civil rights movement in our country. And instead of, and what it's able to do, which is so brilliant, this is a byproduct allegory that's so great too, boom, is first of all, we started off with this brilliant comment on diversity, on acceptance of difference, by popping into the cantina and just being like, weird alien, weird alien, weird alien, weird alien, looking all different sorts of ways, speaking in different languages, making different kinds of sounds, interacting with the world in different ways, and it's all cool. Everyone can come into this cantina, and even though they're all pretty much criminals, it's a nice melting pot of diversity, of difference, where we can be like, yeah, look, all these people from all these different planets and places living different lives with different backgrounds can all come here and just chill. Hooray. So again, like I said, the byproduct. Here's the great byproduct about having your diversity-based discussions through this lens, is now your movie can do something like, be like, bam, main black character, bam, main female character with a bunch of power, super ultra liberated woman, if you will, and it's not a thing. It's not like we're not talking about it, we're not freaking out about it. No one's in the streets being like, I can't believe that Princess Leia had the nerve to talk back to Han Solo. I can't believe that a black man owned an entire city. Oh my goodness, the shock, the horror. Instead, we're immersed in this world where those things aren't real. Those things don't matter. Our attention is being drawn to that, so we don't have people either celebrating or being outraged by those facts. We just accept them, which, by the way, is how it's supposed to work. I mean, real people who want real equality understand that it's not supposed to be like, oh my God, look at this thing that this black person was able to accomplish. It's just like, yeah, that should be a normal thing. We should just accept this as a normal thing. So Star Wars was able to create a world in which this is a normal thing, but we can still understand and recognize that in society today, at the time especially, right, these conversations are still happening. Great. So here have some diversity sprinkled in, and have some brilliant little commentaries on that diversity by having Chewbacca and Han, that relationship where Chewbacca he's the sidekick, yeah, but he's not uncultured, he's not uncivilized, he's not stupid, and he just talks. He talks, and we don't feel the need to translate for him or make some big deal about how he's unintelligible. And Han just understands him. They just converse, and Han understands him, and we, by extension, understand him by Han's understanding. Sometimes, yeah, of course, a character, and this happens also with Luke and R2-D2. Same thing. R2 beep boop 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 beep, and Luke just understands and responds. And this is actually one of the places where actually the dialogue does a really nice job. And it's hard to say about George Lucas because he's not exactly the world's greatest dialogue writer. But where the dialogue actually does a really nice job of, sometimes you understand what they're saying because the actors are parroting back what they have theoretically said, but it's all put into context, right? We don't have to be told, again, or translated for what's happening, what's going on. We're just put into a world where, like, oh, these two different people with different languages are communicating, and we just understand them because they're all people. They're all on the same side, fighting for the same thing with common goals. And we understand that there's a greater, more universal language that exists there that transcends this language barrier. So bam, allegory. What a beautiful message for it to create. Another awesome example, I love this because it's such a little throwaway line that just has so much to unpack, especially considering the time that it happened, is when the bartender, when Luke comes into the cantina, he points at the droids and is like, we don't serve their kind here. They'll have to wait outside. And like, wow, what a big statement to unpack, because it's not just, now we're not talking just, this is not just about the idea of racism, you know, of course this segregation is what this is calling out, without having to be so on the nose or overt about it. We're getting new information. We're new in this world. We're less than half an hour into this brand new world, and we're being told, okay, droids don't have the same rights as people. Cool. That's information for us to sit and store and process as we're digesting the rest of this world. And that's as deep as it has to go, which is, again, the brilliant part about allegory, is if you don't care about those discussions, you don't have to have them. They're not being forced upon you. Again, that understanding that droids don't have the same rights as humans in this world is as deep as your understanding needs to go. Now, if you want to let your brain be tickled by this notion, now it brings you even deeper into the idea of, oh, okay, well, here's, we still have status, we still have staggering. It's going to bring up those memories of segregation, which at the time most people had lived through to some extent. It's going to call up those things to mind. It's going to bring up certain questions, like, in this universe, why don't robots have the same rights as people? And it brings those questions up. Like, obviously, we've examined this in a very obvious way, and most smart people have come to the conclusion that the color of your skin doesn't make you more or less of a person than anybody else. So let's transcend past that. Now we're talking artificial intelligence. Let's look at these two different species, if you will, groups of people, and what types of rights should this artificial intelligence have? And there are the beginnings of some of these conversations as science fiction brought in robot sentience into a lot of movie making, which is, of course, conversations that have to be happening nowadays because we are starting to get that artificial intelligence technology in the real world. So we're starting to have those discussions already about what types of rights, and of course we have more and more movies being made about that now, but what types of rights should robots be afforded in relation to people? And so that depth is all there in that one simple line. They don't have to dwell on it. They don't have to smack you over the head with a frying pan with it, right? They don't have to cut off your arm and leave it on the cantina floor over it. They just drop that little line in there, boom, and let you do the rest, because that's allegory for you. Just, here you go. Here's a thought. Here's a notion. Here's like a way of looking at things that we're not really going to spend a lot of time on. We're just going to sprinkle into your film and enjoy it if you want to, and ignore it if you want to. And that's no big deal either way, right? Or another great example, of course, is Canto Bite. Let's talk about corporate greed by having me stand here and tell you about how corporate greed is bad. By the way, Finn, did you know these guys are all corporate assholes and they're bad? So we start out in the first movie of the trilogy having a commentary about greed right away. Of course, Han having to make the choice between money and his friends. And if you didn't think that this decision had anything to do with money, well, Leia gives a very nice, one of the more on-the-nose lines where she says, "I knew there was more to you than money." And he makes the whole deal, about rescuing her in the first place of being about a reward. So now we have that first without any corporate, overly politicized emphasis on any part of this. Just the idea of greed over compassion. Boom, dropped in there. Bam. And now we revisit this idea in Empire Strikes Back with Lando. Lando, corporate greed over human compassion, right? Yeah, you could say there's a humanitarian interest of him protecting his people and his city and whatnot, but you really get the sense, and it's the same sort of betrayal. It's beautiful framing, too, because Han almost committed this betrayal in the movie before, and Lando does the same thing and then has to redeem himself for it as well. So now we're talking about this, again, very subtly, very dropped in there. You don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to think about it if you don't want to. Just bam, right in there. Corporate greed, corporate interest, business interests, interest in making money and keeping your holdings and your life savings, etc., over human compassion, over giving that up for the greater good of your friends, as well as the galaxy. So bam, dropped in there, nice and subtly. Not, let's sit down and have this little conversation back and forth about all these people living it up in their fancy lifestyles are actually selling weapons to the Empire. Oh. No, all that stuff, we don't need to be told that. We're not stupid. Disney, stop treating us like we're morons, which is another part of why allegory has gone, is because Disney doesn't trust its audience to actually think and have thoughts, which is just damn insulting to us. I'm sorry, give us a little more credit. Give us some credit for that, the ability to analyze and logic and reason things, so that bothers me a lot. And even in the prequels, man, you see this. You sit down with the Jedi Council. You have men and women. You also have different sizes, different shapes, different colors, different species all represented to show that the vanguard of good in the world looks like anybody, could look like anybody. In fact, that the guy in the front is this tiny little green old man. And then also, again, you have this great idea, rather than being so worried about meeting certain diversity quotas in casting, is you have aliens sprinkled in to add that flavor, like Jar Jar Binks, who was a failed experiment, yes, but the idea of having the alien sidekick, the comic relief sidekick, now we don't have to ask any questions of like, well, you cast a black man as your sidekick character, which was great because you added diversity, but you made him the comic relief sidekick, which kind of takes away from his value as a man. Fuck it, just make it a goddamn alien. Now there's no question. He's the goofy alien. He's the comic relief. Obviously. Any questions? No, moving on, right? Other little things like having the very Men in Black-esque alien informant that gave Obi-Wan all the info he needed in Attack of the Clones, right? Great little spot to sprinkle an alien character and bam, add to the richness of the world around you. General Grievous, an alien adversary. And these little bits, these little elements enrich this world, expand this world, make it feel a lot bigger, and a lot fuller and a lot more complex. And then when you have a complex world, you start thinking about these complex notions. And what do we get in terms of alien characters in the new ones? We get Moss, who really hasn't done anything yet. And in terms of relevant aliens, that's it. She's the only one. Aliens, gone, off, just nah. I mean, so you look at The Last Jedi, what a missed opportunity. The Codebreaker could have been an alien. I mean, obviously should have been Lando, but since they weren't going that route, should have been an alien. Definitely great spot to drop an alien. Boom, right in your plot. Enrich this a little bit. Get a little more flavor, a little more sense of the galaxy. And how interesting would that be? How much more interesting would it be now to have Finn, who was a product of the Empire? As we all know, the Empire is racist against aliens. Have him interacting with an alien for the first time. Or better yet, and this is one that let me know what you guys think about this. Because for me, this is like, what if Rose had been a Twi'lek? Right? So Paige is like the typical Twi'lek, super, I mean, they've already existed as sex symbols in the Star Wars universe, right? So why not go with that route, and then she dies, and then maybe like Rose is a Twi'lek with body image issues, not like obviously let's make it all teenage cry about it, but maybe she's kind of a weird looking Twi'lek, or maybe like one of her ear things didn't grow right, So we're now, let's have, rather than on the nose, like we're gonna desexualize the Asian stereotype in movies, now we're just having a general all-encompassing, affects everybody commentary on beauty and body image and whatnot and what have you, without making it about the politics of what actor did we hire and what stupid hairstyle did we make them wear and what ugly uniform do we stick them in. Right now you actually have some deeper commentary, and once again these Finn alien relations. Now you have a situation, now if we're building a relationship there between those two characters, how much more interesting is that now having Finn being someone who's been isolated from interacting with aliens or being isolated from ever looking at aliens as people, as equals, as the same as him, now suddenly developing feelings for one or attachments to one. Now you have an interesting story, and now you have allegory. But why? Why couldn't Disney? Why Disney? Why wouldn't you? Anyway, I'm interested to know, maybe I'm like so far off base and nobody learns anything from allegory, but I don't think that's right. So what life lessons did you learn through Star Wars that were told via allegory? That is what I would like to know from you guys today. If you enjoyed this video here, there's a button to let me know that, and leave your comments and do the sharing and hitting the bell thing, and we'll talk again real soon. Like I said, I'm just getting started. So yeah, that's all. And double camo for the win.
And we're back. Back at Don't Tread on Me. We just listened to Jesse Milestone from Mindless Entertainment. Like I said before, whenever we bring up these with these videos, it's always in the idea of promoting these YouTube channels. So, we'll give you comments, but we consider ourselves to be kind of like a hub to distribute other information to you. When we catch things like what she's talking about, like allegory, like what's wrong with Star Wars? Why isn't it the quality of what we expected in the Disney era? And allegory was a big thing because in order to tackle things like racism or gender inequality, George Lucas used the droids to be the allegory for those situations. It was never intended for the galaxy to far, far away to have explicitly the same social problems that we have on our planet. in our history.
And then, and that's the role of, fantasy, to take us away from the real world. That's the whole point.
So things like when people were so-called, when The Force Awakens first came out, when people were so-called angry about there being a black stormtrooper, not only was that highly mischaracterized because people weren't angry that there was a black stormtrooper, I think more likely that they didn't understand that stormtroopers in that era were not clones of Jango Fett.
Anymore.
Right, anymore at that point. And as a matter of fact, they weren't in the original trilogy. So another generation later, they were not no longer clones. So the idea that she kind of explains that Finn is kind of a reduced role is actually how they describe and how they characterize Finn is actually probably more insulting than it should be, because in the original trilogy, not only is Lando Calrissian a good guy character, but he's a good guy character who's administrator of a city, a mining colony, and a mining colony, a very wealthy person, very wealthy guy. We didn't question those things. We didn't scratch our head like, oh, how could this black guy be in charge of a mining city?
When I was a kid and I was growing up, I never saw Lando Calrissian as a black man. I saw him as a Star Wars character, which was never a question back then for me. He was just a leader of a mining colony, and I accepted it as such, and that was that.
Yeah, I don't know. I never questioned. I thought he was a guy that could make it, difficult. He was charming. He could make it difficult for Han to land Leia.
He was a scoundrel.
I mean, but he was a smooth character. We just accepted it. It was never a thing where we were really even cared about the guy's race. I mean, I tend to worry about the social justice warriors. Like, they're so guilty with their own feelings. That's why they try so hard to virtue signal. Excuse my stutter there.
It's okay. They're going to get to a point, Mad Dog, where they're going to discover that they're going to split up into hierarchies, the different levels of people, the different minorities, to a point where they're going to discover that the ultimate minority is the individual.
So let's talk Rebel Force Radio right now.
Okay.
If you are a Star Wars fan, there literally is no other place you really need to go to for solely Star Wars than Rebel Force Radio. Rebel Force Radio has been under attack by the social justice warriors, and most specifically from Amanda Ward from Making Star Wars. Herself and her comrade allies have gone out of their way to create a hit job to disenfranchise and remove the Rebel Force Radio guys away from their contacts at Lucasfilm. And it's been pretty successful. They went out of their way to remove their sponsors. It happened. This is one of the reasons why I'm really big on the Ethan Van Sciver thing at Comic Pro Secrets. It seems to me that he has the finger on the pulse of what was going on in that situation. Our fourth video is Ethan Van Sciver, Comic Pro Secrets. Like and subscribe again, like I said earlier. He explains why Amanda Ward, the commandant and czar of Making Star Wars, and social justice weirdo, is removed off Twitter. and stops her feminazi-fueled Star Wars show, Rebel Girl. So check that out, and we'll be right back.
Hey, if you're new here but enjoying the content, join us. Subscribe now and ring that bell for notifications.
Part of the success of this channel, Comic Artist Pro Secrets, is its tireless approach to exposing the SJW problem within fandoms. Now, what are SJWs? It's short for Social Justice Warrior. You've seen these people. They're individuals on the internet who are fighting hard to impose political correctness in all media. And they'll resort to slander, defamation, threats, doxing. They'll even try to get you fired in order to stifle opposing views. Now, I work in comics, and I've seen the insidious vampirism of these parasites in that industry. It's taken its toll on comic sales and retailers, and it's definitely disenfranchised fans. And fans are what keeps these geeky hobbies alive. But as more third-wave feminists and soy-based bullies work their way into these hobbies, normal, healthy, enthusiastic fans flee. They leave. They don't want the conflict. And they feel unwelcome by these tragic SJWs who end up calling them Nazis and bigots. And then, when the actual product bends to the will of their tantrums for more social justice, it just isn't fun anyway. Not anymore. But speaking out, pointing their actual quantifiable, mentally ill hatred out, can make a difference. We can stop SJWs. Now, although it's been greatly diminished in recent years, shame is still an actual human mechanism that can be reignited in SJWs, or NPCs, non-player characters, whichever you prefer. A few months back, I did this video segment. Star Wars Celebration is a big fan gathering to celebrate the Star Wars franchise. In April of 2017, it was held in beautiful sunny Orlando, Florida, but 2019 is going to be even bigger. It's coming to Chicago. And the boys of Rebel Force Radio are planning to be there, broadcast, meet fans and friends, and just have a good time. Well, at least they were planning on coming. It seems that SJW weirdos and the Star Wars fan community have mobilized to go after Rebel Force Radio sponsors and try to get them banned from next year's convention. Why? Well, apparently Jimmy Mack and Jason Swank have been saying that Star Wars is pandering to women and that Star Wars won't stop until they wipe men out of their movies. So true. They made comments about how they're sick of women being in lead roles and said things like, if Lucasfilm continues to pander to women, then sales will plummet because women are a minority in Star Wars fandom and men don't want to watch movies with women as leads. That's fine. Now, everything was perfectly okay, and it all made sense until they criticized Andy Gutierrez, Lucasfilm rep, for taking a picture of herself drinking from this mug here, Fanboy Tears. Why is a Lucasfilm representative celebrating the pain of the customer? I really don't know. And yeah, I agree with them. I don't think that's appropriate behavior, but leading voices in the Star Wars fandom community disagreed. Here's Amanda Ward. Rebel Force Radio hits the podcast stage right after Black Girl Nerds. If that's not fucked up, I don't know what is. Here's the plan. God, I love this. We enjoy Black Girl Nerds podcast. Then we stick around to let Rebel Force Radio know exactly how unwelcome they are. Furthermore, someone needs to educate Star Wars Celebration on the disgusting, sexist behavior of these fans. So an alert is sent out to the SJW community. Guys, there's a woman asking for help. A woman is asking for help to protect women. Now, who will stand up and protect women? There's got to be some soy milk-fed gimp out there who will stand up for women. Sure enough. Bobby Roberts inboxed Rebel Force Radio to coax them to suicide? What is this? Like, your show is over now. You get one shot at making this right, and you're botching it hard. You can at least get a somewhat clean, apologetic, reticent exit, but this ain't it, man. Jim, talk to me. Let me help you out here. You guys are really botching this. Like, hard.
Also, pretty sure Sam Witwer wouldn't appreciate the screen cap you guys just posted showing his private Facebook account. Maybe he would, I don't know, but that was also probably a bad call. Anyway, all the prior advice given still stands, most of which boils down to this. Why not just quit? This is bad for you. I don't mean as in you might not have a show, but as in this is harmful to you. All of it. There's no point in pursuing it further, is there? Aside from obstinance and spite, that is. You guys are both north of 40, and having the quality of your life legitimately hindered over a fake radio show about Star Wars. Like, think about that for a sec, and really look at the absurdity of that 100% true statement. Your life is appreciably worse than it was 5 years ago because you can't stop doing this show that is providing you little to nothing in return, either financially or reputation-wise. What's the purpose in pursuing this expired run, guys? What do you think you're going to get out of it? What endgame justifies all this? What possible result makes all this worthwhile? The window where all this ends well closed long ago, guys. You can still like Star Wars without having a show, you know? Millions of people do it every day. Also, for what it's worth, I've never understood why you two go so hard at Jason Ward and Steele Saunders when it's super obvious. The two guys who really get under your skin are me and Brian, one of whom you don't acknowledge, and the other who still at least attempts talking directly to you. Me, it makes sense. I called you out repeatedly. I pulled out those receipts. I made them really public. I directly called for your sponsorships to end very recently, and then they did. So I get why you'd be mad at me. And yet the people who get the brunt of your ire are the Wards? Steele? I don't get it. It's really weird, frankly. Anyway, as per usual, I'm here waiting for one or both, but probably just one of you, to own your shit in even the slightest form. Is nobody else saying any of this to you, really? No one in your circle of friends or your immediate family is saying this? Just the guy you've never met? The one half of you keeps ducking? The one whose transcriptions of your own words led to all this? That dude is the only one trying to legit talk sense into you despite a literal ton of reasons to do absolutely nothing for your benefit? That's wild if true. I can't imagine that it is, but man, I don't know what's worse, that it might be true or that it's not, and you're just ignoring everyone else too. Well, that says it all. Didn't you hear the 8-year-old in Daddy's clothes? Jason and Jimmy, you don't have a radio show anymore. Bobby Roberts says no radio show. But imagine the sociopathy of this dwarf to actually write all of those messages and send them to two people who weren't asking for them, demanding that they quit their livelihoods and their hobbies and move on because why? Because he's an SJW, something, social justice warrior, whamminhood. Worse, imagine that kind of persuasive abuse being directed at a young woman in Star Wars fandom who thinks that Bobby Roberts actually is someone, that Bobby Roberts is a big boy in Star Wars. Imagine what he could do. Imagine what he could get away with for a while. Incidentally, Star Wars Celebration has a zero-tolerance policy for, quote, harassment of any kind. No harassment. Now, if what Bobby Roberts did to Rebel Force Radio and what Amanda Ward and her weirdo friends were planning on doing to Rebel Force Radio as they tried to put on a panel doesn't qualify as harassment, what the hell does? I don't think it could possibly be any more obvious who is responsible for bullying and harassment in Star Wars fandom. No, I want to be very clear. There is room in all fandoms for diverse arrays of people and viewpoints, but there is no room for SJWs, because SJW's very reason for existing is actually to deny the diversity of thought and opinion. Now, Bobby Roberts is no longer on social media and is no longer a part of the Full of Sith podcast. And now, after bullying Rebel Force Radio from social media and from Star Wars Celebration and calling, quote, older white male Star Wars fans, quote, shitty, racist misogynists, Amanda Ward's Rebel Girl podcast account was suspended on Twitter for harassment. Now, following that humiliating indictment, Amanda Ward, Star Wars bully, tweeted the following.
After lots of reflection, Space Jess and I have decided not to continue our podcast, Rebel Girl. There will be no new episodes. The last year has been a blessing of love and motivation from our listeners to both of us, and we are grateful to have been on this crazy journey with you. Good, go, don't come back. The Force will be with us, always. Hey, want to follow me on Twitter? Okay, cool. I'm at Ethan Van Sciver. Talk to you there.
And we're back here at Don't Tread on Me. We are still the defenders of social justice. Yes, we're the defenders of real, true social justice. Not this fake communist ploy that they're throwing in our faces at every moment of the day. But hopefully you enjoyed the Ethan Van Sciver video. The great thing is that he's got this documentary. I think we put up 3 parts of that documentary, or did we do all 4 parts of that documentary? Do you know?
I think we might have done all 4, but either way, I think we covered it really well.
So the 4th one, or excuse me, the newest one, the one that's about to come out. No, I think it's just 3, and this one that's coming out is part 4.
Okay.
I think that's the way it is. All right. So part 4 of his documentary, Star Wars SJW Sex Scandal, he says it's about 40 something minutes long. So it's not something that we're going to be able to put up on our show here unless we break it down. Maybe we could do that, because I think that will be the most important one, because it explicitly puts the light on editor and cuck of making Star Wars, Jason Ward. Let's be real here. Amanda Ward is the one who wears the pants there, and Jason Ward is just the cuck. But I mean, that's my opinion.
I'll bet on.
So part 4 is he's really going after Jason Ward. Now, I want to believe that he has some insight to who actually was harassing Kelly Marie Tran on Twitter to make her leave Twitter. Now, if you didn't know, Kelly Marie Tran, actress who played the wonderful part of Rose Tico in The Last Jedi, the totally necessary character. If you don't know who she is all you got to do is to go to any Walmart and go to the toy section, and you'll find 100 of hers warming 100 of Rose Tico warming the pegs.
That was great, man.
They may not even put her out anymore in actuality because her character was so awful.
Find them at your local bargain bin store too.
Oh, absolutely. There got to be like 99 cent in the 99 cent bin. Anyway, no disrespect to the actress. I think the actress did probably a fine job, the best she could, playing a fucking
with what she
character.
had.
Yeah, playing a boring character. And if you think that's a slap in the face to the actress, here's a slap in the face to Benicio del Toro, who's a fine actor who stuttered his way through fucking The Last Jedi in the most awful fucking ridiculous part ever.
Who muttered his way through it, looked like he was on Xanax half the time. It's like, yeah, I'm in Star Wars. Let me get my check here.
This is how bad, and he must have knew from the beginning. This is how bad his character was. DJ, his name is DJ for Don't Join. And they had to hide that from the fans like it meant something. His name is DJ, and we can't tell you what that means. Yes, yeah. Moment of silence for us all, because there is fucking no reason to hide that name from anybody. Nobody would have ever fucking got any information out of knowing what Benicio del Toro's character was, because his character was virtually useless. He was a tool to get from point A to point B. And I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure if we had a better writer or director, they could have just figured out that somehow Finn has knowledge on how to get on that ship already, and didn't need to have Benicio. It's just, to me, it's just a slap in the face, because Benicio del Toro was originally cast to play Darth Maul. I don't know if you knew that. But then Darth Maul's character changed over the writing process of episode 1. But I thought it would have been really interesting if Benicio del Toro's character played a new First Order bad guy, somebody that, or a Knight of Ren, or something that, that J.J. Abrams left for Rian Johnson to pursue, but chose to hide in identity politics and make bad versions of original ships. Anyway, to get to the point, we're going to leave you off here with it's like 40 seconds long. It's just a little trailer from Ethan Fanskiver on his part 4 of his Star Wars sex scandal documentary. So check it out, and we'll see you hopefully next week. And for Don't Tread on Me, I am your host, MADDOG. You can contact me at maddogdtom@yahoo.com. Beachball, where can you be found?
At n3radio2017@gmail.com.
Wow, we're going to have to get you an updated email, because it's 2019 now.
No, but that's the original. That's the original start date of the N3 Radio business.
Oh, I got you. It's the establishment date.
Yes, there you go.
You want to leave us off? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything going on in your life that you want to bring up before we punch out the door?
No, just N3 Radio's continue expanding. Don't forget to check out this show at Spreaker.com/user/N3 Radio. You can always head on over to the Facebook page. Where's the Facebook page real quick, Mad Dog?
It is N3 Radio presents Don't Tread on Me. And it's open to public. You can join. You don't have to be a friend of somebody on the show in order to get in. The only thing is that we do have some restrictions for posting, and we just want to be sure that SJ weirdos don't come up there and post Nazi crap to make us look bad and all that. So we do have some restrictions on there, and that's the reason why I don't want anybody putting racial or hate stuff out there, because that's not what I agree with. It's not what I believe in. I know that's not what Beachball believes in, or anybody else connected to the show. And I just know those tactics are not they're not beneath fucking SJWs.
Right. And don't forget also that as we were mentioning at the beginning of the show, you could listen to the show on iHeartRadio.com, and it will come on YouTube.com a couple of minutes after 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. It'll pop up. Just subscribe to N3 Radio on YouTube and click that little bell to get an alert, like Mad Dog said earlier. That's about it for me, Mad Dog.
Yeah, I just I hope to get in here and be more regular. I know we've had some little issues. Had a computer go down. We got new equipment. I had my dad living in my studio area, which for over a month, and it made it a little difficult to come in here and record. But we got some new equipment. I hope you guys enjoy the new sound. I gotta
yeah, we do. That's okay. That's the signal that's like, it's time to go. 30 seconds.
All right. So this is Don't Tread on Me, and we're out.
Hey, if you're new to the channel and enjoy the content, why not hit the subscribe button and join us? Thank you. Welcome to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. You're listening to Ethan Van Sciver, 25-year veteran of the comic book industry, great big Star Wars fan, and that is why I am up right now at 10:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time making a video about Star Wars when I could be sleeping. I could be sleeping or, watching a movie or doing any other thing, but I'm not. I'm monitoring Star Wars news. This is Matt Martin here from Lucasfilm Story Group. Matt Martin, who looks suspiciously like my old friend Matt Martin. I had to check, and I was like, did Matt Martin get a job with Lucasfilm? Matt Martin used to, he was an artist. He drew a book called Vortex, and then Snowman over at Hall of Heroes when I worked there doing Cyberfrog. I was like, that looks just like Matt Martin, but it isn't. It's a different Matt Martin, believe it or not. There's more than one Matt Martin in the world. All right, so Matt Martin is up on Twitter. He was yesterday. It says 1 day ago, but people are talking about this now. He says, was trying to avoid posting the Last Jedi stuff this week, but I've already failed, so boom. And then he retweets, this guy, tweet is unavailable. That means that this soy-based monster blocked me on Twitter. Why would you block me? Why would you block me on Twitter? I don't know who you are, but he does. Apparently this guy does a podcast about Star Wars. I did go and look. I snuck around his block, and I wanted to see exactly what it was that he tweeted. He tweeted a picture of Vice Admiral Holdo, Laura Dern, her probably most infamous role, and she's holding a little gun up, and he tweeted, hey, I'm sick and tired of hearing how everyone hates Vice Admiral Holdo. Not everyone does hate Vice Admiral Holdo. I love her. What exactly do you love about Vice Admiral Holdo, you fool? And then he says, if you feel the same way I do, retweet this tweet. And to my surprise, to my shock and dismay, what was 37,000 retweets, probably in no small part due to the fact that Matt Martin, Lucasfilm Story Group fellow, he went ahead and retweeted this tweet. So people are talking about Holdo and how wonderful Holdo is, or how controversial she is, and having a conversation with Matt Martin. And this gentleman right here says, meh, I don't hate her or The Last Jedi. That means that you do hate her and you hate The Last Jedi, or you would have said, no, I like her and The Last Jedi. But I think her actions would have been better through another character. How hilarious would it have been if Admiral Akbar was the one to 9/11 Snoke ship? Admiral Akbar! Boom. See, get it? It's a Muslim joke. It's a Muslim joke, yeah. A little politically incorrect, but amusing. Matt Martin responds, the problem with Akbar is that the audience, and Poe parenthetically, would automatically trust him. Everyone trusts a fish-faced fool that says, it's a trap. Everyone trusts that guy. They like his big, gigantic, glassy eyes. It needed to be a new character whose agenda and motivation was unclear. If it was Akbar, Poe would have, by the way, garbage tier, Akbar Poe, Poe would have instantly trusted him. Although, it's a trap, motherfucker, would have been a great final line before the boom. Wrong. This would have been a better joke, honestly. But it would have pissed a lot of people off, so maybe you're right. It's a trap, mother effer. Even the inclusion of the effer word, I don't know, would have made it a little bit more PC for today's audience. He says, could it have been more clear? Sure, even Roundhead Ryan Johnson has admitted that. Does it severely damage the film or make her a bad character? No, that's not what makes her a bad character. What makes her a bad character is that Laura Dern was woefully miscast in a Star Wars role in which she did not belong. Laura Dern probably is not a Star Wars fan. One can tell that she was not taking her role seriously by the fact that you can see her visibly mouthing the words pew pew as she fires her laser gun. This is absolutely ridiculous. You don't say pew pew when you're shooting your blaster. You don't, not unless you're 3 years old, or you're someone's big sister that stole your Han Solo blaster and hasn't figured out that, it makes the noise, it's the batteries. You don't have to go pew pew, and all right, I'm working through some stuff here. I had a big sister, and I did have the Han Solo blaster. Well, moving on. The script has a lot less flaws than those also enjoyable movies, but films are rarely perfect. Especially genre films. You know what? My documentary, SJW Star Wars Scandal Part 4, will be perfect. Eat that. He says, I believe he acknowledged it on Twitter a while back. I cannot recall Ryan Johnson ever acknowledging that Last Jedi was anything but perfect. In fact, when asked if he acknowledged or agreed with any of the criticisms the fans had levied against The Last Jedi, he said, nah. And he said it just like that. He said, nah. In a way that made you want to smack him, to be honest with you. I find violence abhorrent. But if somebody says, nah, then you know what I mean. Do what you got to do. He says, I don't agree. There are plenty of experienced directors. There's some conversation happening in between this, but it's even more boring. That struggle far more than Ryan did. Even George struggled. Blah blah blah. And then he says, in regards to, somebody brings up the fact that who was it? Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott wanted to do a Star Wars film. So he says, I love the guy, but he's made plenty of stinkers. Exodus, a good year, far from masterful experiences and everything. And then he says, The Last Jedi is 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not saying that's the be-all, end-all. Blah, blah, blah. Still defending The Last Jedi. These people will defend this movie until time immemorial. More stuff. And then look at this. This is the big tweet right here. This is what everyone's talking about right now. To be clear, I don't make these decisions. I barely work on the film. I provide occasional notes that they may or may not need or heed. And the first draft of The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens, so it had nothing to do with fan reaction. Holy God. Holy God, is that an amazing revelation? Is that an amazing... We all thought, everyone assumed, given the way things work, that, of course, The Force Awakens was written first, and then somewhere along the way, like in a separate room, a padded room, hopefully, Rian Johnson hammered away on a manual typewriter, excreting the script for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Under no circumstances did anyone, I think, suspect that The Last Jedi was actually the Rosetta Stone for this whole trilogy. That is a shocking revelation from Matt Martin here. This is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. He says, but if we had made it an Empire Strikes Back Redux, it would have been a huge step back. He says, people are critical. Everyone is trying to do their best. It's a huge corporate machines garbage here, and everyone's heart is in the right place. I don't know about that. And no one is ignorant to how people will react to certain choices. This is absolutely astonishing news. Let me. When Rian Johnson talks about subverting expectations, he wasn't subverting expectations from the standpoint of following up J.J. Abrams' movie. J.J. Abrams was desperately trying to justify The Last Jedi. That's what's astonishing about this. The Force Awakens happened in order to justify or lead into The Last Jedi, which was already written. This is an incredibly astonishing piece of information. I can't tell you how this is going to shake Star Wars fandom and how this changes the perception of everything that's going on over at that loony bin called Disney Lucasfilm. The fact that Rian Johnson subverted not the expectations of people following J.J. Abrams' movie, but subverted the expectations, so to speak, quote unquote, meaning crushingly disappointed and destroyed us from the very word go. The last reference he had for anything was Star Wars Return of the Jedi. That's the last reference that he had to work from, and he absolutely crushed it from there. Absolutely went, F all of this, screw it all. We all wondered. I mean, people wondered why. Why Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker didn't even get screen time together in The Force Awakens. It turns out that wasn't J.J. Abrams' fault. The fact that the Beatles, quote-unquote, didn't reunite when Disney had the chance to do so was not J.J. Abrams' fault. It was actually Rian Johnson's fault. Rian Johnson had Luke Skywalker on a whole other world, alone, isolated, hidden from the very start, the very first page that he wrote. And by the way, that's why, Rose Tico didn't appear in episode 7, right? Maybe that was something that could have been. I mean, JJ probably could have. The whole thing is, JJ could have taken any of those characters and put them in The Force Awakens as well, and he chose not to. Every single way that you look at this, new surprises come forward. What the hell was what the hell was J.J. Abrams complaining about through Simon Pegg about the lineage of Rey. That apparently that was already, or was that changed in a final? There's so much to unpack here. It is absolutely incredible. But I want you to just focus on this and think about this. The first draft of The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens. So it had nothing to do with fan reaction. It was just about Rian Johnson's desire to utterly destroy Star Wars from the very start, and J.J. Abrams just trying to keep up with him, just trying to save things, just trying to make things work. Well, it didn't work.
N3 Radio is a non-profit teaching platform for non-professionals. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, professional use tips the balance in favor of fair use. N3 Radio in the mix.